Hi viewers, welcome to my channel Everything Spooky and Dark, where I, Volpina, will share the spooky stories from across the world. So, let's jump into the story. This happened to me during my first year of university, in October. I was living in the dorms. Our dorm has a unique feature. You need a keycard to gain access to a specific floor. So even though someone on the third floor and the fourth floor live in the same building, they can't access each other's floors. Before that, I had injured myself playing sports, so I was under orders to rest, which meant no Halloween parties for me. Pretty sad for a horror fiend like myself. But to try and make the time a happy one, I busied myself helping to make costumes for people and doing their makeup. Once I was finally finished, I packed up my makeup and decided to watch some movies. In my room, a guy popped up and introduced himself. We chatted a bit and exchanged email addresses, and I walked back into my room and said goodnight. The first warning sign was that he walked into my room behind me, despite me saying I was going to walk into my room. I felt really awkward and tried to say, in a roundabout way, that he needed to leave. But he was not getting the hint. I finally had to say, "You need to leave my room now." I chalked this up to him, maybe being drunk or something. But I did wonder how he got onto my floor if he was not with anyone partying. Before I went to bed that night, I checked my email, and there were 5 from the creep. The first being, "Hey, I'm so glad that we are friends," and the rest asking why I was not online. A few days later, I got a knock on my door when I was studying, and it was him. I explained that I was studying and needed privacy. He tried to walk in my room again, but I braced my arm on the frame and said firmly that I needed to study. The next day, he was at my door again, and the next. I began pretending that I was not at home. Another day, there was a knock at the door, and when I checked the peephole, there was no one. And so I assumed it to be a postman. I opened the door, and once again, the creepy guy stood before me. He has begun hiding from the peephole, so I would be more likely to answer the door. I told my roommate never to open the door if he was there, and I told the people living on my floor that this guy was beginning to creep me out. So if he wanted to get on the floor, whatever sob story he gave them, don't let him on. A few days later after that, I was on the bus coming home, and I got a text from someone who lived on my floor telling me not to come home because the creep was on my floor and was sitting in front of my door, just waiting. I went to a friend's house that night and spent the night there. When I got home, I was told that he waited for me for 4 hours before leaving. At this point, I was getting freaked out. A few days later after that, he began waiting outside the building, and if I left, he would follow me wherever I went. I was too spineless to tell him to go away, and I tried to be more passive about it. I never spoke and never gave any indication that I was paying attention, but he followed me to class, cafeteria, and always tried to follow me home and get access to the floor. I went to the resident advisor. Resident advisor is an older student that watches over the floor, and told her what happened. She spoke to the RA for his floor and told that the creep had been telling his own RA that we were best friends and that we were dating. My RA tried to explain that I was uncomfortable, but the other RA believed the creep. Thankfully, one thing did deter him. He would never approach me if I was with a group of people, so my floor mates banded together. If I went to dinner, I went with my floor, and if I wanted a drink or seconds, someone had to come with me. Walking to class and even waiting for a bus was done in a group. He got onto my floor once when someone else was coming home, and he forced his foot in the door to let himself in. I was hiding in another room And when he left my door to go and sit in the TV lounge to wait for me, I went downstairs and ran around the other side of the building and got into my room before he noticed. Then the phone calls began. I never gave him my number, but he somehow obtained my mobile number and room phone number. And at first it would be around 1 to 2 phone calls a day until I told him that I wanted him to leave me alone. Then the phone calls began coming in every hour, with him begging and pleading for me to talk to him. Without caller ID, I needed to answer the phone because of school and part-time job. At this point, it was November and I was a wreck. I was tired of having to plan out doing simple things like going for food or walking to a bus stop. Stress was not helping me recover from my injury and I was losing weight. I looked sickly. I went back to the RA and begged her to help me. She went to the head of the dorms and explained everything that had happened. I explained how far this had gone, and my roommate then told them that he had followed her a few times, demanding that she would tell him where I was. I felt awful. She never told me this because she was afraid of upsetting me further. After that, I heard that he was told to leave me alone, and in any further contact would result in him being kicked out of the dorm. There was one email where he went insane on me, telling me how awful I was. How could I do this to him? We were so happy together. Surely I was cheating on him with other men. After that, nothing. At first, when I would see him around the campus, I would run to the women's toilet to hide. I would see him around campus or on campus and he would always just stare at me. Never tried to approach me, never tried to get my attention, just staring. I used to walk by and try to pretend I did not notice him staring, and I would try and act like my heart wasn't pounding. Till this day, this incident gives me chills, and I find myself waking up in the night, staring out of the window, looking for affirmations that he is still not out there, watching my every move. If you have creepy stories that you want to share with us, write to us or comment down. Maybe your story will be the next project which will be narrated on the next episode. If you like the stories, make sure to show some love by clicking like and subscribe for more content. Until then, bye.